The moment he entered, the world seemed to stop breathing. The Duke of Wexford, once the most desired man in London, now the most haunted, paused at the threshold of the ballroom, his gloved hand tightening around his cane. The music faltered, the laughter stilled, and for the briefest heartbeat, even the chandeliers seemed to dim. Across the room, framed in candlelight and whispers, she stood. Lady Evelyn Hartwell. The year had passed since he'd torn her heart apart. Since the rain-soaked night he'd turned from her carriage window and said words that bled her soul dry. He remembered every syllable, every tremor in her voice when she'd asked why. He had no answer then. He barely had one now. She hadn't seen him yet. Her laughter, soft and effortless, belonged to another man now. The Viscount of Greystone, a poet with kind eyes and unscarred hands. Her gown shimmered in ivory silk, her hair pinned with pearls he once promised to replace with stars. Every inch of her radiated calm, composure, the kind of peace that only comes after surviving ruin. The Duke's chest tightened. He had faced gunfire, betrayal, and exile in foreign lands, but nothing compared to this. The sight of the woman who had once loved him like a promise and now looked as though she had never known his name, he stepped forward. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is that? It can't be. He left the country after the scandal. The Duke? My word, after what he did to her. The crowd parted for him, as if he carried a storm in his wake. Evelyn turned, slowly, drawn by the stillness, her eyes finding his through the sea of silks and masks. For a long moment, neither moved. The music had stopped completely. Even the violins waited. Her gaze was calm, but her fingers trembled just enough to betray her. He saw it. Of course he did. He had once known every flicker of her breath, every unspoken thought in her eyes that he wanted to speak, to say her name, to ask forgiveness, or perhaps only to prove that he was still capable of voice. But the words caught somewhere deep in his throat. The memory of that last night, the rain, her tears, his own cowardice, pressed against him like a blade a year ago. He'd broken her heart to protect his own. He had believed love was a weakness, that duty demanded he sever what was pure before it destroyed them both. But now, watching her, he realized she had not shattered. He had. Evelyn inclined her head politely, like one might greet a distant acquaintance, and turned back toward her companion. That small, devastating gesture drew blood deeper than any wound he'd ever borne in war. The Duke took another step. One, then another. Every eye followed him. The candles flickered as though the air had turned heavier with unspoken history. He stopped just behind her, so close he could breathe in the faint scent of roses and winter rain. Lady Evelyn, he said at last, his voice low, raw, trembling on the edge of regret. She didn't turn, but her hand, resting on the Viscount's arm, tightened for just a heartbeat. The silence was unbearable. Every corner of the room seemed to lean closer, waiting for the explosion that never came. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he had never stopped thinking of her, that her letters still lay unopened in the drawer he could never bring himself to burn, that the war had changed him, yes, but it was losing her that had unmade him. But she remained still, and he understood he had returned a year too late, and though the music had not yet begun again, the evening, like his chance, was already over. The Duke lowered his gaze, the ache in his chest blooming like a wound reopened by memory. Around him, the crowd began to murmur once more, laughter cautiously returning, the orchestra hesitantly drawing breath. The Duke stood motionless, watching her glide away through the tide of color and perfume. Every step she took tore another seam in the fabric of his restraint. The murmur of the crowd grew louder, the music swelled again, but it all sounded distant, blurred, as if he stood underwater, watching the last of the light fade from a sinking ship. He wanted to chase her, to pull her aside, to say all the things that had clawed at his soul during sleepless nights, the things pride had once forbidden him to speak. But a duke did not run. A duke did not beg. And yet, every part of him screamed to do just that. He followed at a distance. Evelyn moved toward the terrace, her gown trailing like a whisper across marble. The moonlight bathed her in silver, and when she stepped in the night air, her shoulders rose and fell with quiet, uneven breaths. She was composed, yes, but not untouched. He could feel the tension radiating from her like heat from a dying flame. He stepped through the open doors, the night wrapping around them like a secret. The faint scent of garden roses drifted between them, the same roses he once planted at her family's estate, back when love had still felt like something eternal. "You shouldn't have come back," she said softly, her back still turned to him. Her voice, steady calm but edged with something fragile, made his heart twist. He swallowed hard. "I didn't come for the season. I came for you." A bitter laugh slipped from her lips. "A year too late, Your Grace." He flinched at the title. Once, she had called it by name, whispered it like a prayer. Now it sounded like a wall. "I thought I was protecting you," he said quietly. "There were rumors, things that would have destroyed you if our engagement continued." You destroyed me yourself," she interrupted, her voice trembling, not with weakness, but with the pain of remembering. "Do you think I cared for rumors? For gossip? You didn't trust me to choose what I could bear. You made that choice for me." He took a step closer, his chest aching with guilt. "I was wrong." She turned then, her eyes glistening beneath the moonlight. "You were a coward." The word cut deep. He did not deny it. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sounds of laughter and violins from the ballroom floated faintly through the open doors, like echoes of another life they'd both lost. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out a small, velvet-wrapped box. He held it out, trembling slightly. "I carried this through every mile of exile, every battlefield, every night I wished I hadn't let you go." She didn't take it. Her gaze flicked to the box, then back to his face. "And what am I supposed to do with it now?" "Keep it," he whispered, "or throw it into the Thames. But know that it was always yours." For a moment, her eyes softened, just a flicker, a memory of the love that once burned between them. But then she drew herself up, that same poise and grace he had once admired, now standing like armor between them. "You taught me something, Wexford," she said, her tone quiet but steady. "That love without courage is just another kind of lie." She turned to leave, the moonlight catching the tears she didn't let fall. He reached out, fingers brushing the air where her hand had been. "Evelyn, please!" She paused at the doorway, not looking back. "The man I loved died a year ago," she said softly. "I mourned him. I buried him. Don't make me do it again." And then she was gone, back into the glow of chandeliers and music, leaving him alone beneath the cold, indifferent stars. The Duke stood there, his breath visible in the night air, the unopened velvet box heavy in his palm. He looked down at it, the ring meant for a future that had never come. And for the first time in his life, he wished he were not a duke at all. Only a man who had loved her and lost everything that made him human.